Thank you for bringing up this opposition thing, because I forgot about this question which you previously asked. There's a question about opposition, I think now I remember. It's another story, of course, I mean, the incompetency of the opposition and all that. But after all, I mean, you should also remember, I'm one of those who are very critical of Republican Party's politics in many respects. But apart from that, there is also sociological limitations in Turkey. Because after all, this political parties are not, their support is not determined by their projects, as it is suggested many times that, well, I mean, probably it is the weakness of opposition parties who could not come up with better projects. But in Turkey, politics and political support does not necessarily depend on political projects, even if it's better than this or that, than the governing party, or this party better than the other party. But it has, identity politics are very strong in Turkey, we have to accept. And it overshadows also this discussion, as you suggested, on economy and or discussing more social affairs in Turkey. It's mostly defined by identity politics concerns. So that's why there is a limitation in Turkey for opposition party, for the opposition of Republican People's Party kind, if you like, secularist opposition, and social democrat opposition, if you like. And their support is almost determined to depend on urban, secular, westernized Sunnis and their strong alliance with Alevis. Because the basic concern is secularism and the liberal culture. The plain truth is that. So behind this demand, social demand for more secular politics, for more secular society, and for liberal cultural environment, the limitation is a demographic limitation even, that, to tell the truth, it's about 25%, minus 2 plus 2. It's a demography, more than anything else, determines the strength of opposition in Turkey. And Turks are overwhelmingly conservative, Sunni Muslims. So, and this is another demographic fact. And unless this majority of Sunni Muslims, nationalist Muslims, transform themselves and start demanding more freedoms, more democracy, the democratic future of Turkey seems quite gloomy to me. But still, of course, we need a very strong and more competent opposition party to put pressure on the governing party, to put pressure on this majority of conservative Turks for more rights and freedoms and more secular space. Otherwise, the picture is not that hopeful, I suppose, is how I see it. Concerning education, you may be supportive of educational policies of the government. I'm not discussing if it's the correct age for children of 5 years old to start primary school.
Structure. You have the structure here.
No,
You don't have the
not
structure.
even that. Look, apart from that, Turkey is a very polarized society. So we can't discuss anything on objective grounds. If conservatives propose something, others get it something negative. Even if it was about health policies, you know, if it's launched by the conservative governments, it's rejected by others. If it's launched by a secularist party, a very good project is launched by a secularist, by the secularist opposition party, conservatives reject it. So, was it always like this? Partly, but now it's more and more polarized, more and more tense society. So I think this education policy debate is also mostly about this polarization than objective discussion on the right age of children to start primary school. Somebody mentioned of cultural problems. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, we need to talk about political culture, if not culture. But I think this culture talk is quite problematic because it's very how to say, even Orientalists, I beg your pardon, but well, I know that it's not your intention to suggest an Orientalist approach. But if you say that, I mean, after all, if there is this reincarnation of authoritarian culture, it may be the result of cultural problems. Then this is the end of the conversation, so we shouldn't, you know, there is no chance to improve it. And we can't talk and think about the reasons and cures about it. So we should, you know, leave it aside. So I'm not inclined to relate political problems to political culture or cultural in general. If I finished with other questions, remind me if I didn't. I want to move to Syrian foreign policy and Syrian affairs. They have half an hour.
Do you want to? There's actually a lady waiting just at the back there for Türkçe tabii sorabilirsiniz.
Biraz yüksek.
Would you agree with me?
Yes.
Whatever you say, either way.
If a government is not secular, religious government, and against the seculars, would the democracy in that country, could it be a democracy? Or do you think the religious government is like a violent explosion? If it is a religious government, democracy cannot live in that country. And secondly, as you can see, the AKP government, which is in power, is not good for Turkey and for you, Nuray Mert as well, which for me as well. And why the Western countries and the United States as well supporting this government? Is it because in many ways service-led goals, like in Libya, Taliban was against he was with Gaddafi at the beginning. But when the Western countries wanted opposite, and then he changed his mind. And now, probably for Syria as well, what he is doing, and serving those intentions. And the third one, would you tell me, with the headlines, what is the Kurdish problem? Because it is a bit positive that in Kurdish parliament, there are out of 550 MPs, more than 100, about 100 and 150, you tell me if I'm wrong, are Kurdish original MPs. So could you tell me the problem with the headlines? What the Kurdish people want? Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to answer she's going to answer these questions, and then if we have enough time, we'll come to you.
No, and since we have limited time, I want to talk on Syria first, and foreign policy, and Kurdish question first, and then go back to our questions, because they are related to the ones that I already tried to answer. And concerning Turkey-Syrian relations, yes, it's true that government was reluctant in the beginning to express any kind of reaction against the previous regime, and it has been criticized for this hesitation in the beginning, and soon after he took on the government and the governing circles took the firm position against Assad regime, and it was mostly at the time, it was mostly because of this criticism and because of Turkey being a Western ally, and it was necessary for Turkey to side with its allies, and rather than showing support for Assad regime. It was not realistic, it was not acceptable and agreeable. But then what happened? Why it went so far from one extreme to the other? Mostly because, well, as I said, it started with some kind of pressurizing over the government by the Western world, and then apparently the government thought that, well, as a Western ally, I should behave so, and start to be against the Assad regime and try to help its weakening or collapse, whatever. And then Turks, they thought that, well, it must be, if it's going to be so, it must be as quick as possible, because we had very close ties with Syria, economic ties, and we removed visas and borders were almost free and all that, and there was also economic interest there. So, if the regime was doomed to fail, it must have been as quick as possible. And that's why Turkey turned to be very eager to support attempts to weaken or destroy Assad regime. And then of course there was this concern of Kurdish problem, as usual, because this is the basic concern of Turkish foreign policy concerning its southern borders. It was also so for the case of, in the case of Iraq, if you remember. And concerning the Kurdish problem in the mind of the government or Turkish state in general, it was urgent to try to shape Syrian opposition in the way to eliminate Kurds from taking a decisive role in the shaping of the new regime, and they thought that it would be very quick, and it's better for Turkey to patronize the opposition, to give it its own color. That's why they allied themselves with Syrian National Congress or Syrian National Congress. Syrian National Congress. And that's why they don't be very eager. There was also concerns about PKK struggle to avoid to have another heaven, safe haven for Kurds in southern borders. Turkey needed to avoid such a prospect, and for all these reasons, and on top of everything, or plus other reasons, Turkish foreign policy has long turned to be very patronizing in the region, following this Ottomanism, so-called neo-Ottomanism, and this Justice and Development Party, and especially this current Foreign Minister Davutoğlu have always expressed their willingness for kind of reviving Ottoman influence, or having more role in, as they say it, more active role in the Middle East. And they always relate their policy to Turkey's Ottoman legacy in the region. So they thought that, they tried even to treat Syria as a vassal state, as if Turkey is strong enough to do so. And as a result, they started to lead a very aggressive and active policy in Syria, targeting the current regime, helping the opposition. I'm not suggesting that Turkey is providing weapons and all that, but there are all sorts of rumors and reportings that Turkey is, this is what Turkey is doing, ferrying jihadis to Syria, or training jihadis in refugee camps. Well, I can't prove all these, but there are all these reportings. It was only 2 days ago, Robert Fisk, who used to be the arch critic of Syria, wrote something on Turkish support of jihadis or refugee camps, training camps in Turkey. And there are some other reportings and writings as well. So finally, Turkey ended up with being quite lonely in its policy of Syria, because Turks didn't also follow what's happening in the Middle East in general after Arab Spring, and they could not, I think, they could not comprehend what was actually happening in spring countries, Tunisia and Egypt and all these recent developments. The idea was like, it's the time of moderate Islamists. Western countries, United States, are all supporting moderate Islamists, as they also supported Justice and Development Party. Well, okay, they were partners of Justice and Development Party in Turkey. I mean, this moderate Islamists all over the places, in Tunisia and in Egypt. And, well, this was going to be a transfer of power from secular dictators to Muslim democrats. And that's why Justice and Development Party could be a patron of moderate Islam, patron of those countries, disregarding the influence of, for instance, importance of Egypt, and disregarding the complexities of Middle Eastern politics and their differences among countries. They took it in a quite shallow way, if you ask me. And so they could not decide how to behave properly in Syria. Like Syria is a mixture, I mean, it's a very complicated, complex society in many ways. I mean, there are many sects and different sects, Alevis and Muslim majority and their relations, and then Christian, I mean, there lives many Christians, Arab Christians. It's a heaven of Arab Christians actually, and many, I mean, almost all Iraqi Christians had to immigrate to Syria to save their life. So, I mean, Syrian question was inevitably would get complicated, and Turkey never, Turkey underestimated the complexity of Syrian problem and crisis, and overestimated its power of determining Middle Eastern politics, determining the Syrian affair, and all that. That's why, and of course, I'm being extremely eager on eliminating Kurds, eliminating any hope of autonomy on behalf of Kurds. This also has been a decisive factor in shaping of Turkish foreign policy concerning Syria. Despite the fact that actually, according to this new shift of powers in the Middle East, I don't think that apart from Iran and Assad regime, nobody thinks in similar way with Turkey concerning Kurdish question, and it's an important issue actually. A nation of almost 40 million people. I'm not suggesting that, I mean, in the near future there is going to be the rise of integrated Kurdish nation state, but after all, I mean, they have to have some sort of political status. This is what happened in Iraq. Now this is the era of the end of nation states, but after all, this is not the end of political status for different people craving for their rights and liberties. So it's only Turkey and old nation states like Iran, no matter that the regime is totally different in Iran and Turkey. But in terms of national interest, they have common national interest. This is the paradox of Turkish foreign policy actually, that it's a Western ally, but its understanding of the current situation in the region and the world order is more in tune with Iran and Syria, which are Turkey's enemies now. You know, if not Iran, yet it's going to be so, because after all, there is this clash between the Western camp and the Western allies and Iran and its allies. So we are in a very difficult position. And current government refused to see the reality that it's a paradox to be a Western ally and to have a similar approach of the Middle Eastern politics with those problematic nations like Iran and Syria. Concerning Kurdish question, well, they have long collaborated with each other against Kurds in the region. And Turkey is still expecting to collaborate with others concerning Kurdish question. That's why, strangely enough, now the current government doesn't only accuse Assad regime of helping PKK, because now there's also this. It's quite successful manipulation of public opinion to relate your two enemies with each other. Well, Turkey is the enemy of Assad regime, Turkey is the enemy of PKK, so, I mean, well, okay, show them in the same picture. Turn your fight against PKK into also a fight with Syria and vice versa. But after all, Turkey is not only targeting Syria or accusing Syria of helping PKK. Top politicians are also accusing their allies, including US and Western countries, EU countries, of collaborating, supporting, indirectly, covertly supporting PKK. Rather than questioning themselves that, I mean, they can't agree with anybody in the region just because of their obsession with repressing Kurds. And this is where the problem starts. That's why they can't agree with anybody, and they hope from their enemies and friends to collaborate with them against Kurds. And it's a very awkward situation. And they feel free to declare some sort of war. It was only recently the head of the parliament, Cemil Çiçek, said that Turkey is referring to Kurdish, struggle against Kurdish rebels. That Turkey is fighting with all nations on the earth by fighting with PKK. Why? Because all these people, naming also allies, are helping PKK. I mean, those people are top politicians, very experienced politicians. They never thought that why on earth your enemies and friends may agree on some point in supporting Kurdish cause, for instance, if this is true. And maybe it's your problem that you think that everybody is against you. And it's another regression in Turkish politics, that it was no different than the previous status quo, who turned to be extremely skeptical of everybody and came up with this old Turkish skeptical view that Turkey is surrounded by enemies. And the talk of, I mean, as far as we know, the governing party is no leftist government, neo-leftist party, but they started even to talk of imperialism, Western imperialism, helping to PKK. On one side, we are the best friend. The government is very proud of being a US and Western ally. And on the other, the governmental politicians, starting from the top, they feel free to talk of imperialism, and they feel free to relate PKK and Kurdish question with imperialism, with imperialistic support. And yeah, it's not the incarnation of authoritarian politics because of the political culture in Turkey. Definitely there is this reincarnation of this skeptical attitude Turkish politics towards everybody on earth. We have this very famous motto, what was that? The only friend of Turkey is that another Turk. Now, I mean, well, this previous status quo is lost their game because they came to this point and they could not produce any fruitful, promising politics for future, domestically and in terms of foreign politics. And these were being thought of being dynamics of, or good dynamic for democratization. They end up with the same idea that Turkey is surrounded by enemies. You know, we should, by all means, we should suppress Kurds and stop them craving for any sort of political status, not only within the borders of Turkey, but also outside of the borders of Turkey. And it's quite actually curious that actually these people who are accused of Ergenekon were nothing, and now they are in prison. Some they are in prison for 5 years, some a bit less. They were not thinking differently than the current government concerning, especially concerning foreign policy. So it's paradox of the current Turkish government and current Turkish politics. Unfortunately, my time is...
You can have 5 minutes if you want to.
In 5 minutes, nobody should expect me to to say very interesting things about the Kurdish problem or the problem of, as the lady there talk about this, the role of what is the rightful role of the military overseas. It takes longer time than that to discuss all these matters. So I want to thank you for coming and listening to me.